women do typically tend to give so much in relationships. Unplug from social media. Take a minute to just reflect and be. We are having internal conversations, whether we know it or not. There's a constant dialogue that's happening in our brains. And although we aren't verbalizing it, doesn't mean that the conversation isn't happening. You're seeing that person post a picture of their dad, but you might not see that when they were growing up, they had a tumultuous relationship with their dad.
It's time to get untitled. Aren't you just fed up of living up to a title? Whether it's the one you're born into or the ones you accept along the way. The weight of a title can be heavy. You might be a mother, a father, a doctor, or a CEO. I believe your title doesn't make you who you are. The truth is, you are so much more. So come inside, strip away the titles, perceptions, and narratives so that we can create a safe space filled with enlightenment and self-discovery. But the real question is, are you ready to get untitled?
Hello and welcome to the Get Untitled podcast. I'm your host, Chloe, and this podcast has been created because I'm absolutely frustrated with the titles that we have been born with and some that we've picked up along the way. Some titles are super restrictive and they put us in a box, and we allow these titles to define us, and sometimes that can cause so much restriction. So I created this safe space where we can connect, to have deep conversations, bring in experts, bring in people that know more than we do, and most importantly, we can learn together. So if you're ready to get untitled, then hit play and continue watching. Today we'll be having a conversation all about relationships. So season 1, we're going to be having a deep dive discussion with experts like relationship therapists, parents. We're going to be bringing in romantic couples, and we're going to be exploring the different types of relationships. But episode 1 is all about the relationship that we're having with ourselves. Often we don't realize that the relationship we're having with ourselves is the foundation. It's the foundation to the relationship we're having with others. So I've got a few speaking points, and we also have some cheeky dilemmas that we're going to get into today. So let's get started. So I was watching a video. Jan Van Zandt has an entire series on YouTube called The R Spot. And there's a particular episode and she explains the relationship we're having with ourselves. And if you haven't seen that episode, I will insert a short snippet so you can see a clip about what we're referring to.
Mirror back to us the places and pieces and parts of ourselves that we cannot see, are unwilling to see, that we deny or dismiss or ignore. Every relationship in your life is a reflection of the relationship that you're having with yourself. Now, right now, if you're having some resistance to that, if you're thinking about your ex or your ex-mother-in-law or your girlfriend or somebody that betrayed you, and your mind is telling you that can't be true, that's not right, that's it. That's it right there. Because there are parts of us, there are things about us that we simply cannot see. Sometimes we don't want to see. Sometimes we see and then we ignore or deny. You see, each and every one of us has what we call a shadow part. That's the part of us that we hide and cover and covet. Those pieces and aspects and things about ourselves that we find unpleasant or unacceptable. We tuck them away in the shadow. And someone will come into our life and reflect a light on that shadow. And that's when we see it. We see it in there.
But in truth, the relationship we're having with ourselves is the blueprint. But why is it the blueprint? So I'm going to give an example that I personally struggled with, and that was with putting myself first. I often put myself last in relationships, and I didn't understand how that was showing up. And that linked very much to me procrastinating. So because I had a task that I didn't want to do, I might procrastinate on that task and leave it to the last minute and put everything before. So when it came to my relationships with others, I became accustomed to putting their needs before mine and leaving mine to the very last minute to then advocate for myself. And it just kept showing up at work. It showed up in my friendships. It showed up in my personal relationships. And it's only when I sat and went through therapy that I was able to reflect and realize that everything stemmed from that. Now, some people might say, I know myself quite well and live with myself for all my life. But the truth is, we're constantly evolving. Like, our desires change. The things I actually liked last year, I don't like this year. My interests are changing. And when you go in and out of relationships, the person that you're becoming evolves. So that's why it's so good to just check in and say, hey, do you know what? How am I feeling today? Am I in a good mood? Am I feeling tired? Like, I often sit and I have these check-ins because I want to make sure that I'm filling my cup first. We see all these quotes on social media and we're like, oh, fill your cup first. But in all honesty, how do you do these things? What are the practical tips around how to actually do that? So today we're going to be getting into a bit more of a discussion around that. But when it comes to personal titles that we actually carry in relationship with self, it can be quite weighty. When I actually sit and I think about it, I'm a twin. So I've actually never, when people say like I'm born alone, I came into this world alone, like I didn't come into this world alone. I came into this world with a twin. And often I feel like my twin knows me better than I know myself. And I give you a quick story time and this actually makes me laugh. But I was dating this guy. This is when I was like a teenager. And I was like to my sister, like, oh my gosh, I really like this guy. He's been taking me on all these dates. And I was a little bit like, the honeymoon stage, we're a little bit obsessed. And I was like, oh my gosh, he drives this really nice car. And I kept like listening to all the things I liked about him. And then I showed her a picture of him. And she was like, you do not like this guy. And I was looking at her like, and I was so gobsmacked because I was like, how can you tell me who I like? I know who I like. She was like, I know you better than you know yourself. You do not like this guy. You like his car. You like that he's taking you out. You like all of these things, but you don't like him. And I had to really check myself because she was right. I didn't like the guy. But I had allowed society's perception on dating and relationships to inform the way I actually felt. And I started to trick myself into thinking I really liked this person and I didn't. He was a great person, but I was not physically attracted to him. So I say this to say, sometimes we think we know ourselves, but in all honesty, we can always get a bit deeper. We can always dive deeper and really see, do I really like that? Did I like, just because I liked something last year, doesn't mean I like it this year. So let's get into our first dilemma of the day, and then we're going to expand and get into a bit more detail on how we can build a better relationship with ourselves. And actually, let's do some practical, exercises that we can take home, reflect on, and pick back up, because life is a delicious journey of self-discovery. So, Ken, are you ready for my first question?
Yes.
Amazing. What's the dilemma?
I feel like I have lost myself in my relationship. How do I reconnect with who I am outside of these titles?
Alrighty. I definitely think that getting into a relationship, right, you're giving so much of yourself. I remember leaving a 4-year relationship and thinking, who am I? Like, for the last 4 years, I've only known this person. But this particular example, this person's in a relationship and they feel like, do you know what? I am feeling like I'm stuck. I'm feeling like I don't know who I am anymore. And that could be a personal relationship, a romantic relationship, a marriage. But how do you really connect with self when you've got a relationship? The question and advice I'd give you is this. The first question is, how much time are you actually spending with yourself outside of time with your partner? Now, I know this person obviously can't answer, but it's something I want you to think about, because if you're spending all of your free time with somebody, then maybe that is a part of the reason. If, on the weekends, you're going out with your partner, you're with them all week, you actually don't get much time alone except for when you're at work, then you can start to lose your identity. The second thing I'd say is figuring out what you like and having a hobby outside of your relationships is so important. So my little thing that I do is poetry is my thing. And it's kind of like, it's been a secret, but obviously I'm sharing it now, so it's not a secret. But it's something that I just do by myself. So I like book tickets to poetry events and I go alone. And it's kind of like a solo date. And I decided on Valentine's Day to bring my cousin with me. And she enjoyed it, but I felt like she wasn't as excited of the relationship. Two, have you maybe lost sight of some of the goals and ambitions you had as a person before you got with that partner? And, you know, I don't know if this person's a man or woman, but in all honesty, women do typically tend to give so much in relationships. A lot of my guy friends, even though they've got kids, they're married, they're still hanging out with the guys, they're still prioritizing guy time. So I definitely would say not only getting a hobby, spending more time with yourself where you've actually got scheduled in date time, date night, self time, journal time, uh, and meeting up with friends and family without your partner being present. I know it's a bit weird, it's a bit tricky, but the truth is, before your partner, you were spending a lot of time with your friends and family, and you don't want to lose those relationships at the expense of your romantic relationship. So when I was in my 4-year relationship, I felt like I didn't have enough time with my girls the way I used to when I was single. And I took on the feedback, put my big girl panties on, and I learned that, do you know what? I need time with my girls and I need time with my man. How do I make that work? So I hope that that answers all the, I guess, the dilemma. And if I haven't, then do let me know.
I constantly compare myself to others on social media, which makes me feel inadequate. How do I stop the cycle?
Wow. I've been there. You are not alone. My mum used to say this phrase: comparison is the thief of joy. And if I'm honest, I totally agree. Sometimes we can look at something and what someone has, and all of a sudden we want that. But before we want it, we look and we say, oh, I don't have that. I.e., if someone's grown up in their life without a father and they see somebody post their dad on social media, that can lead to comparison. Like, oh, I wish I had a dad. Like, if I had a dad, I'd do all these great things. And it's just leads to that internal dialect and internal narrative. Now, one thing about relationship with self is we are having internal conversations, whether we know it or not. There's a constant dialogue that's happening in our brains. And although we aren't verbalizing it, doesn't mean that the conversation isn't happening. So the relationship you're having with self, a lot of it is that internal thought, right? We're actually thinking about it. It's the thoughts that we have that leads to a lot of the doubts, the limiting beliefs. So when we look at this example of someone comparing what they see on social media, you are seeing a moment that is like captured, okay? You're not seeing the full story, i.e., you're seeing that person post a picture of their dad, but you might not see that when they were growing up, they had a tumultuous relationship with their dad and they only just reconnected in the last 5 years, or, you know, you're not seeing the full picture. So when it comes to social media, I would strongly advise, take it with a pinch of salt of what you're seeing. Like, not everything is what it seems, but also take a moment to be grateful for what you have. I did a 2-month detox of social media and it was the best thing ever. Towards the end of last year, I decided to go to New York for 2 months. And it was a sense of soul searching, but I wanted a different environment. Life felt monotonous at the time and I just felt like I really wanted a shift. And it was the best experience. When people say that traveling helps you to build a better relationship with yourself, I totally agree. So I went out there, and although I was staying with family, I did spend a lot of time alone. When I was out doing a lot of activities, excursions, going for walks, going to the gym. I even went to run club out there by myself. I connected and met new people, and it was an amazing journey. But for that moment, whilst I was out there, I was still on social media because that's how I was finding events. So I would go on to Instagram and they have all these different black link up pages, and I would go and look for events. And when I came back, I just felt like I need to just unplug from social media, take a minute to just reflect and be. So I deleted Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Everything was deleted on my phone. And I have to say that in the 2 months, it was the best feeling. It made me realize that we spend so much time just scrolling. Like we're literally like robots, just scrolling on the app constantly. And it leads to comparison. But the truth is, that is not real life. This is. When you turn your phone off and you got to be present, you got to show up, you got to deal with life challenges. Social media is irrelevant. And in the 2 months, I feel like I was more present at home. I got so much more done in the day. I felt like I got a moment to talk to God. My relationship with God got so much better. My prayer life improved. I was able to pick up my Bible and read. Not just, I'm just going to read it on my phone. Like literally just connect. And most importantly, I started to realize that there were different parts of my life that I had been ignoring. There's different parts of myself that I had just been ignoring and putting off. And I really encourage you that if you are going through an issue of, comparison, take a minute out. Take a minute off social media. Take a break. Pause the app or limit your time on the app. Set 1 hour timers. That's my new thing. So when I re-downloaded the app, I felt like, okay, I still want to be in touch with the world, but I don't want to spend too much time on it. I have 1 hour across all the apps. There's a 1 hour limit. And it is the best feeling ever because I'm not consuming as much content. I'm still reading books. I'm still present in my life. And I want you to do the same. So much people have like depression, anxiety because of things they see on social media. And I just don't want that to be you. So it might have not been the advice you were expecting, but I do hope that it was helpful.
I struggle with self-doubt and feeling unworthy. How can I build a healthier self-image?
Wow. Self-doubt is honestly a beast. I feel like we've all experienced it. We've all gone through a moment where we felt like I'm not good enough. I'm not good at that thing. I'm not good enough to be chosen. And imposter syndrome often is linked to self-doubt. And I'm a coach, even though we're leaving titles at the door. I've coached many people on doubt. And a lot of what comes up is other people's opinions that we adopt. And those opinions we then make our own. And when it comes to self-doubt, a lot of the time it's a thought, like we said, that internal dialogue that you've adopted and taken on. And now all of a sudden you've made that thought your own. I'm not good at that. I'm not good at this. And then that leads to you not feeling worthy. You feel like, do you know what? Because I'm not doing this, we attach our worth to our attributes and our abilities. So because I'm not good at that, I'm not worth this. And in all honesty, they're all lies. They are absolutely lies. So I would suggest to the person that's written this dilemma, take a moment to actually write down all the things that you are doubting about yourself, right? So I'm not good at this. I'm never going to, write down all of those conversations. Before we dive into what you do when you write it down, ask yourself, is this a truth or is it a lie? Is it a fact or is this something temporary that you have the ability to change? And then I want you to write another statement that is literally the direct opposite. And once you've got the direct opposite of that statement, we now try to change the narrative. And I'll give you an example. I had a client and the client, she had a limiting belief. So when we were coaching, I could hear the subtle essences of her saying like, I'm just not good at this. I'm not good at that. And in the end, I remember we had like a big outbreak and she was like, everything I touch turns to shit. And I just remember just sitting there and I was like, wow. And I let her rant. She had a good rant. And I sat for a minute and I said to her, okay, we've got to change that. We absolutely have to change that. And she wrote down another narrative and she said, everything I touch turns to gold. And because of that, I said, okay, everything you touch turns to gold. And every time she came across a block, she would say, everything I touch turns to gold. Everything I touch turns to gold. And her complete life transformed. She lives in another country. She's doing her dream job, and her confidence. The truth is, like, even if she had none of that, her confidence alone, right, led to her making that shift. But it all stemmed from that narrative. So instead of her doubting, saying everything I touch turns to shit, like I'm no good, she was able to reframe that. So I hope that that's helpful. Today's episode, we kind of dived in to the relationship you're having with self. And I want you to take a minute and reflect on the relationship you're having with yourself. Are you putting yourself first? If you're a mum, do all your kids come first? Does your partner come first and you come last? You know, when was the last time you took yourself on a date? When was the last time you romanticized yourself? And most importantly, how do you speak to yourself? When you make a mistake, do you call yourself dumb? You're so stupid. Like, you know, those are the things that help you to look and identify, like, is that cool? Is that cool? Because I don't think it's cool. And I just want you to take a minute to just remember that you are all you've got. You are all you've got. And if you can't show up for yourself, then no one else will. No one else is going to show up and love you and care for you and fill your cup for you. And when you go into a relationship, you are bringing the relationship you have with yourself as the foundation. So I hope that this episode was helpful and that you've been able to take something away and put those little gems in your bag and apply it to life. We're going to deep dive into all the relationships this season. So if you enjoyed this episode, let me know in the comments, what is one thing you are going to take away? What's one thing you're going to do differently? And I want you to share this with someone that you think, you know, that you love. Share this with a friend, share this with a sister. And I hope that this episode transforms your life and you start to strip back all these titles and remember that the relationship with self is key. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.